What is an atheist? What do we mean by atheism?
The Wikipedia defines atheism as the absence of belief in the existence of deities. The dictionary defines atheist as a person who denies or disbelieves the existence of a supreme being or beings. American atheists define atheism as a lack of belief in gods. They emphasize that atheism is not a system of belief, any more than being healthy is not part of the spectrum of being sick. The Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy defines atheism as the denial of the existence of God. The Catholic Encyclopedia first defines theism as a belief in the existence of a personal God. Then it clarifies that atheism is the opposite. To deny this tenet is to invite the popular reproach of atheism. We can thus reach the following definition with which none of these parties can possibly disagree. Atheism, the denial of the existence of God, or one who lacks belief in the existence of God or gods. Here, I will argue that atheism is unscientific.
Now, I state for the record that I used to be an atheist for most of my life. We breathed atheism at the dinner table almost every day when I was a kid. My folks were so atheists that we were among the first members of American Atheists back then when it was founded in the 1960s by Madalyn Murray O'Hair. She used to come to our house. I met Madalyn many years later when I moved to Austin, Texas. And I went to visit her organization one day, and I met Robin, her adopted daughter. And I told her that, my parents had been members of American Atheists. And Robin went in there and she called her mother, Madalyn Murray O'Hair, who came out. And I told her the same thing. She went in and brought a card back. And in that card, I saw the signature of my father. And she told me that she kept the names of every person who ever contributed to her organization. This was a few years before she was murdered. So you might think that since I'm talking in past tense, that maybe I became a born-again Christian or a fundamentalist Christian, or maybe even an agnostic or a Buddhist. Not by a long shot.
The fallacy is the mistaken position that there are only two choices, atheism and theism. An even more fundamental problem that underlies this incongruous view is the misconceived notion of science that has persisted until the end of the 20th century. There is now a rival version of science and of the scientific method that you may want to become familiar with if you plan to debate the issue in public from now on.
There's been a major paradigm shift that most people are unaware of, and it may be worthwhile for those with an open mind to listen carefully to this new current. The so-called science that has been passed on down since the 16th century was long ago overdue for a total overhaul. It was in desperate need of mending.
20th century's college version of science, which is passed on down to high schools and elementary schools, emphasizes evidence, proof, and falsification. But what is the purpose of evidence if not to persuade the decision makers? What is the prosecutor trying to do if not convince the court that his version of the case is correct? What is the reason for presenting evidence if not to sway the jury? And what does proof mean if not that you manage to convince and recruit the members of the crowd? Proof simply means that you sold an argument to the other fellow. Have they perchance proven the existence of God to you? Well, if they did, it simply means that you bought into the proposal. They proved the argument to you. They convinced you to believe. Your skeptical neighbor may still remain unconvinced. And what does falsifying mean if not that someone changed his opinion? Falsification according to whom? Who falsified the theory? Is falsification merely a veiled way of saying that you don't like the other fellow's theory and you're going to censor it? Has anyone managed to convince the entire planet that he has falsified God? Or do most people continue to believe God despite the alleged proof? Isn't falsification ultimately a matter of opinion?
Perhaps they convinced you that God exists and that black holes don't. Or maybe it's the other way around. Either way, we're talking about your personal convictions. You believe in the theory. They have proven it to you. Your neighbor might still be skeptical and hold contrary opinions. Science does not deal with opinion. Science is objective. The purpose of science is to explain a theory rationally so that the other person understands it. In science, we do not present evidence because we are not in the business of persuading, convincing, or recruiting. Those high-pressure sales tactics are the sole province of religion.
It is in religion where they have proven and do not allow dissent. Some call this proof dogma. Others call it gospel or knowledge. And still others call it fact or axiom or something like that. In science, we don't prove theories. In science, we explain them. Whatever our listeners believe after the show is of no concern to science. In science, we do not falsify anything because we are not in the business of changing people's opinions. Evidence, proof, and falsification are hallmarks of religion.
There is no difference between an atheist, a theist, and an agnostic as far as science is concerned. The new paradigm rejects all three because all three fall back on opinion. Whether a person believes in God or denies the existence of God, he is merely giving you his personal opinion.
An atheist that states that he denies God or lacks belief in God is giving you his opinion. And a theist who tells you that God exists is also giving you his personal opinion. If either one presents evidence to prove to you that God exists or doesn't, he is attempting to persuade, convince, and recruit you. He is doing nothing other than religion.
In science, we do it objectively. In science, we do not deny that God exists. And in science, we do not affirm that God exists. In science, we say, let us assume that God exists. Now we can begin to explain our theory with this assumption.
A theory is an explanation. A theory can be, for instance, how the universe came to be. or why there is so much perfection or evil in the world, depending on your point of view. Every person has his own explanation for why things are the way they are. In order for the audience to understand your theory, you begin your presentation saying, "Let us assume that God exists." Now you can proceed to explain your theory to the crowd.
We can only believe in theories, but God can never be a theory. God can at best be an assumption. We don't believe in assumptions. We concede an assumption at face value in order to understand the theory that the presenter builds upon it.